Inclusion and Belonging, where we talk about everything under the sun, DEI related. Ken Newton and I were introduced by the wonderful Janet Ramey. And as soon as he and I got into conversation, I said, Ken, you got to come on. You got to come on the series, and we have to talk about this. Ken, introduce yourself, and then we're going to dig in on supply chain and DEI.
Fantastic. Great to be here, and I'm excited about diversity and inclusion and equity. I am the Director of Service Delivery at the NASA Shared Services Center, one of the NASA Component Center. Actually, it's a consolidated business services organization within NASA, and just excited about what NASA's doing from a DEI standpoint. We have always viewed that diversity is extremely important in accomplishing the mission that we have here at NASA from a technology standpoint, being able to hear from all sides, much needed in problem solving, which we have a lot of that on a day-to-day basis, accomplishing our mission.
Well, and I love, right, that it's been so clearly tied to your mission. And literally mission.
Mission, definitely.
So let's talk about DEI and supply chain, because I think that this is fascinating and overlooked, right? So for example, we're a certified woman-owned business,
okay.
Right? And that's no easy certification to get, right? There's a lot of hoops to jump through. There's a lot of, so when you think about DEI and supply chain, how does NASA approach that? And what's the, let's, dare I say, philosophy around it first? And then what are some of the logistics around it?
Well, let's take, NASA is 85% outsourced. So we, of our $24 billion budget, 85% of it is outsourced. And so it has always been extremely important, especially since I've been in contract management, contract oversight, for us to be able to manage small business goals and small business objectives, women-owned, whether women-owned, veteran-owned, those different types of businesses, minority-owned businesses. And so we have specific goals that we have to meet when we let a contract. And usually those goals are dollar goals. And NASA just recently, and something we've talked about, is really took a stand back in July to look at equity. And are we making sure that those federal dollars, those taxpayer dollars, are going and benefiting people of all races, people of all origins, and making sure that the equity is there from that standpoint. And so we're still evaluating and assessing that to be able to maximize and invest in communities from that standpoint. And so we are on the, I love it that we're on the leading edge of the federal government. We've been the best place to work in the federal government for the last 10 years, based on surveys of our employees and the scores that go with that. And so I'm excited about what NASA is doing from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, and even to the point that the summer of 2020, when all of the racial unrest, NASA added inclusion as one of our values. And so we value inclusion. It's one thing to hire people from a diversity standpoint, but if you're really not being inclusive, so this is not a check the box thing. This is hey, we need this to be successful. And I believe that's why we are successful because of that.
Well, and you just said so much there, Ken, that I want to unpack. I mean, first, the fact that 85% of your dollar spend is with contractors. Yes. I didn't know, I knew it was a lot, Ken, but I didn't realize it was that much. So then your supplier diversity gets real important, doesn't it?
Extremely important. I'll tell you an example of something that you have to notice is when I was at Kennedy Space Center, it was senior leadership was encouraged, and during that time, this is several years ago, we were in a hiring freeze. And the only place that we were hiring from was co-ops. And we couldn't understand why we weren't hiring diverse people. Well, the co-op pool wasn't diverse. And so we had to diversify the co-op pool. And so it's important to understand where we're hiring from. And so all of those from a supply chain standpoint, and even our vendor at Shared Services, we collect diversity data and inclusion data from them, because we have what we call direct hire authority today. And so we're able to hire directly, and a lot of that comes from our contractor. We're hiring, and so it is extremely important for us that they have a diverse candidate pool for our hiring from that standpoint. So from a hiring standpoint, but also just the makeup and of our organizations. And one of the things that the federal government always does anyway is it's important, especially for an agency like NASA, to involve, because a lot of times it involves votes in Congress. And so the diversity of where we're buying our suppliers are, we want suppliers, California carries a lot of weight. New York carries a lot of weight, but when you throw all in the other states, so we post and we share, hey, we just awarded a contract here in North Dakota. We just awarded in South Dakota. And so diversity from many different points in what we do in the business that we're in, and the support that we need to do what we do, we have to be concerned about those things.
Well, and I love that, right? You've really talked about across the diversity spectrum, right? Where you're looking at veteran-owned, woman-owned, minority-owned. I'm assuming LGBTQ plus is in there, right? Like all of the different
HBCUs, all of those, areas that you're looking to pour money into to invest in those areas. So the hiring comes from those areas as well. So every group that you can think of, we're looking to try to invest in.
Yeah,
because that's what it is. It's investing in those communities, but it's investing in the future of this country.
Right. The mission.
The mission. Yeah.
You know what I don't know, Ken, and I should know this. Is there a certification for disabled owned?
Actually, you told me something I didn't know. I didn't know there was a certification for women owned. I didn't know that there's a certification process.
Oh, but yeah.
I would assume for everything that there is.
Yeah, I'll have to ask the folks at Disability In and some other, because I think that would be right if we're really trying to mirror and match our world, right, and bring diversity to the table. Because and then we're going to talk about inclusion here in a second. You have to look across the spectrum, and I love that you're doing that, because again, you get to better results, and NASA has seen that for a long time. And so let's talk about adding inclusion as one of your values, because that makes a statement, right? Because when you're talking about values, and I know from you and I being in conversation that y'all use those values actively in running NASA. So to add inclusion, what did that process look like? And then how have you woven that into the day in, day out environment at NASA?
Well, I think that was prior to that, we were our associate administrator for diversity and inclusion had sponsored what we call the Unity campaign. And the Unity campaign focus was on that what we do every day, we are supporting something that's bigger than ourselves. And organizationally, we're supporting an organization that's bigger than our organization. And so recognizing that in supporting this thing that is bigger than ourselves, being inclusive of all of these different thought processes and mindsets and understanding. And so it really put an emphasis on like being in the executive leadership. in our performance plans. Inclusion is a part of that performance plan. And so, but what you want to do is you want to make it second nature.
Right.
You don't want to make it that I want to be inclusive because NASA says I get a better rating because of my mission outcome is better.
Yeah.
Because that is important to us. And so I value that. And so on an individual basis, I value it because it is something important for our agency and our organization to be successful.
Which impacts, I love the way you said it, which impacts a greater organization, which happens to be the United States.
That is correct. That is correct. And so if we could bottle it up and can it and pass it to other federal agencies that of saying, because we have people come and say, NASA, how do you do it every year? How are you, because there are some, I mean, some people don't have the best look of the federal government, but there are many out there that how can we be better? How can we support our customer? And see, we're not a customer facing organization like the Social Security Administration or so it is extremely important that they figure out how do we improve this overall customer experience, and how do you do that if you don't embody the people that you support?
Right. I'm going to peel back something that I think is, I want to point out. Y'all measure it, right? In terms of you're measuring it and then performance reviews against it. And then we talk about this, that when you're talking about the everyday inclusion, it's about behavior change, right? Yes. And behavior change is hard. And if you want me to both understand, it helps the mission. Sometimes that's easier than I have to show up every day as a leader in this way. But what's probably going to compel me to do that is I know I'm being measured against it, right? So it's like anytime that you have to, it's like having an accountability partner, or you're going to go to the doctor and that they're going to put you on the scales and check your blood pressure and all those things, right? Like you want to get good scores because it's a measure of your health. So I think there's, even just taking the stand there to say that this is a part of our conversations in our performance reviews, which helps support what we're doing for the mission and because I feel like you got to hit this at all sides, right?
You do. And so actually you brought up the talking to the doctor aspect and getting, it is a conversation. The more important part in that is the conversation with, he can send you the test results.
Yep.
But if you don't have a conversation about the test results and understand the importance of this number or that number, and so I think NASA started having the conversation. I remember the summer of 2020, that I mentioned, some very difficult agency level discussions, and I think part of the problem is there's things that we don't talk about.
Right.
And
right.
so
and how can we improve it if we can't talk about it?
You have to be able to talk about those things, and so from an agency level, we had those difficult conversations, and you find those people that don't want to have them.
Absolutely,
it's easier to not talk about it, but you have to. You don't want to have it in people's face, but you want to have the conversation, because what we had to tell our supervisors is you have to be open to it if your employees want to have that conversation.
Right.
Your employees want to express, hey, this is how this is impacting it.
Right.
And so I've told, and I'm not a first line supervisor, and one of the most difficult jobs is that first line supervisor, because you're dealing with people on a very, very personal level.
All day, every day.
All day long. And you could have 10 different employees that are different in every aspect. They have different things that motivate them. And the only way you understand what motivates someone is you have a conversation with them. Yeah. You can't assume, what's fair. Well, fair is not treating everyone exactly the same.
Nope.
Our children are not, I have 3 boys. They are very different. They have different things that stimulate them, that excite them, that motivate them. And it is for a supervisor, especially a first line, to tap into that and understand that. Because you want every employee to be as effective as they can be, because that's what you're trying to drive.
You're trying to get the best results from them. I love that you brought up parenting, because I had this light bulb moment. My kids are only 18 months apart, Ken. And I was parenting my son, who's the second, the same as I was my daughter. And I had this like, well, that's not going to work with him, right? That is not going to work. They are night and day in terms of what they respond to, like all those things when they were. And if we think about like taking those lessons from parenting and to just, whether I'm in a leadership position or I'm a team member,
Mhm.
right? Like what you need is different than what I need. And I think those conversations, particularly, team leader to employees, but also at the team, right? What do we need as a team? How do we operate as a team? Because that's the and willing to go there as a team and understand that what's in it for us. What's interesting is I often use the example, Ken, of the team that took the picture of the black hole, right?
Mhm.
And how diverse, right? Like 60 different countries, 60 different organizations and 5 continents. And, you take a look at that picture and you hear the stories. That was about diversity and inclusion, right?
That's
Able to do that. So, right. And I love that y'all are so clearly tying all of this back to the mission.
That's it. Our VIPs or hero employees are our astronauts, because of what they do and the danger that, they're not flying the friendly skies on US Airways or Delta. They're flying on a test vehicle. And so let's talk the diversity aspect. So our last astronaut class was 6 men and 6 women. And then there are different diversity things within that. But the inclusion aspect is to say, you know what? If we look at who have gone to the, and we're talking about going back to the moon. So we're next big thing for us is our space launch system. And it's going and not just going and planting a flag on the moon, but it's going and building a moon outpost. And so the inclusion aspect is we have never sent a woman to the moon. We have never sent a person of color to the moon. So now the big thing is in our return to the moon, it will be the first woman and the first person of color that goes to. So not only do we have them in the core, astronaut core, we're now saying, all right, we're going to include you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. In the
and stand ready to be the first. It just amazes me. I watch LinkedIn and it amazes me how many firsts that we are still having for women. How many firsts that, that was the first 4-star female general. That was the first.
Yes.
So we've got to get out of those firsts. And maybe it's time.
Please, right? I can't wait until we're through those first.
Yeah,
some days it feels like we've made such progress. I'm like, really? Oh my gosh, that's the first. and then we just hope there are lots of fast followers, right?
Yes.
That we're creating environments where there are lots of fast followers, because it's not sometimes it's like, the one salmon makes it upstream, right? Instead that we've created gates where everybody's making it upstream.
A personal story. So I came into NASA. I've been working for NASA for 32 years now. So back then it was a lot of government push to diversify. But I never wanted to, I wanted to be hired on my own merit. So 2 weeks after starting at NASA, and I started at NASA Kennedy Space Center in shuttle operations, as a shuttle operations engineer, and I get pulled aside by this gentleman in headquarters, and he spots me in the hall, and older gentleman, and found out he was over our Equal Employment Opportunity Office. And he says, what are you working on? Shuttle operations, excited about being in shuttle operations. And he tells me that, my director that was at that time, I told him he had to get some minorities in there. And I didn't even pay any attention to it. The day I started, three minorities, two black males and a black female, started in shuttle operations. And I immediately take, my mood. I said, wait a minute, I wasn't hired because of my own merits. I was hired because of a objective to get more minorities. And for about 2 weeks, Maureen, I felt
So he
bad.
made you doubt your own credentials.
Well, no. He basically said, this is why you were hired. And so for about 2 weeks, I felt bad about it. And then I kind of shook it off and said, you know what? It doesn't matter what got me in the door. What matters is what I do with it now that I'm. I think that's what people have to, is that how do we get people an opportunity in the door?
Mm-hmm.
To see and to be able to celebrate what they bring to the table. Mm-hmm. And that has been my mission since that aha moment that I had.
Well, and making sure that, so many things, right? Interrupting the unconscious bias, right? So that you are bringing people in the door that are, and then creating environments where everyone can do their best work, right? Where you're not having to overcome hurdles and hurdles and hurdles and hurdles just to do good work, right? But instead, we're at this team level. What are we doing as a team so that Ken can do his best work, so that Mo can do her best work, so that, right, and all of us together collectively can be doing good work to for the mission.
That's I had the opportunity based on the program that I came in as a fresh out engineer, to meet all of the senior leadership at Kennedy Space Center. You don't always get to meet the senior leadership. You don't always get to be in a room and have a discussion with the center director. And I had that opportunity. So one of the things that I've done for 15 years now, being a senior leader, is I actually do the new hire orientation. I participate in new hire orientation. And I tell people, I say, you know what? I don't process a lot of transactions, but it is my job to create an environment as a leader. And I think if leaders took on this, what is the environment that I am creating to where I put across these priorities of the necessity of inclusion, of the necessity that especially being a small organization, we don't have a place to put people on the side to watch. We can't have a lot of sideline watchers. And so we have to engage and include everyone in the discussion. And so it's important for especially first line supervisors, but supervisors of any variety, team leaders, to see that person on your team. They may not be as vocal, but what you want to do is make sure that they know you want to hear from them. I value what you have to say and what you have to share. And I believe we would all perform better when we have that environment such as that. We have to create an environment where we want people to be successful.
Well, and I love that, when you have to be scrappy, right? When it's like we don't have a lot of fluff here in terms of,
no.
So I better figure out how to get the most out of my folks.
That's it. Hey, we're because every day you're being challenged to do more with less. And we can do it if we tap into the abilities and provide the training opportunities and provide and that's one of the another thing that I love about NASA is that they recognize the importance of you're my greatest asset. When I learned at NASA that we have some really high dollar hardware that we invest in, from a space launch system, billions of dollars in that, but they put their money where their mouth is when it comes to that hardware can't do anything by itself. And so you are our greatest asset, and they know they have to invest in their greatest asset. And so we monitor how much training dollar we're spending on training.
Yes, right.
We
What's
monitor
the investment?
investing. So we're going to bring you in, and then we're going to invest in you, and we're
Mhm.
going to pour into you, and we're going to make you. I was a big Michael Jordan fan, and Jordan in basketball. He was successful, and probably could have been highly successful as an individual. I don't know if their team would have been as successful if he didn't involve everyone. And so that's what I tell our when I have all hands meeting. I said, your job as a leader is to involve everyone in your success, and to bring everyone to bear and bring their gifts and talents and tap into what they have to offer.
If we're talking about sports, I'll often say you have to learn to score without touching the ball.
There you go.
Right, because you've got everybody else doing their best work. You've created, right, and the strengths and weaknesses that you're not going to put your kicker in as a right as a running back.
Well, a great sport for them. So my sons didn't play football; they played the other football, soccer.
Yeah.
And my youngest son, I love to see him play, and he's even playing in college now. But he would have discussions with my wife because he prefers to pass the ball versus to score. He's a great passer.
Yep. He's the assist guy. He's the assist guy.
Yes. And so she said, well, you were right in front of the goal. Why didn't you? I said, no, he had a better opportunity than I had. But you both get to celebrate from it. And so I think that is a great example of what we do. Sometimes we might carry the ball a certain distance, but someone else may be in a better position to take it the rest of the way.
Well, and even that understanding, I always think about, I really admire Abby Wambach, because if you looked after every goal that she scored, she started pointing.
That's right.
She started pointing to every single one of her teammates because she saw it was all of us. I happened to come off my head or my foot, but all of us got that in the net. And I think that's the, all right. I knew this was going to be a great conversation. I would like you to leave me with one last truth bomb, Ken, about DEI, the work that NASA is doing. Maybe it's a personal philosophy of yours. Drop the mic for me here. No pressure.
You know what? It's an old saying, and I was excited to have a leader, our administrator, Administrator Nelson, Senator Nelson, who actually, it's funny. I grew up in Florida, and Senator Nelson was probably every post-elected position in Florida that you could have when I was growing up, and to have him as our leader, and to have that person leading that charge on diversity, on inclusion, on equity, very visible about it. And I think that is what's necessary, is that people to stand up and be heard and stand by it verbally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that resonates with employees, because now you know what the organization stands for.
Yeah.
And he does it in all hands meeting. He does it in his communications. He does it. And so I embrace that. And we've had previous leaders that were the same way. We've had a run of, from Charlie Bolden, who's a flown astronaut, a general in the Marines. All of those really set the tone for this organization. And I think we need more leaders to set the tone.
Mhm. Right. Visible and consistent.
Visible and consistent.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Ken, thank you so much for joining us and sharing all of this. I'm going to rewatch and go through and think about, there were so many key points here. And I love that there's just this arc, right? That it's from how do I show up as a supervisor to how are we all achieving the mission, and everything in between. So thank you.
Thank you. You know, sometimes you need to stop and refill. I was a big proponent of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People,
Yep.
which was something that we did at Kennedy Space Center and trained all of our employees. And so to sharpen the saw, and each one of us, these little sessions right here, we sharpen the saw. You know, we reinvigorate and even excites us more to know, God, that how important these things are for our success of involvement.
And
we're all a part of the team.
Yes, if we can all link arms, right? There's so much work to be done. If we can be learning from each other and leaning into it together and making mistakes together and talking about it all, that's how we all move forward. So thank you. Everybody get out there, do the next right thing, and we will see you next week. Actually, it's the last in our panel series where we are going to be talking about diversity, equity, inclusion in retail. So we'll see you here next week, everybody, and do the next right thing. Cheers.
Fantastic.